Hey, how's it going?
Find yourself there, Todd.
Pretty good. Just getting my day started.
And right on time. You don't have lead singer's disease. That's the
Because
takeaway.
I'm a drummer. Fuck those singers.
Exactly. About the drummer part, I am going to come back to that because when I interviewed Eddie Jackson like two
Oh,
years ago, we spoke
okay.
about you and your drumming. But your new album, Rejoice in the Suffering, did you have the album title all along?
Um, well, that was the first song that Craig and I wrote, and I always liked the sound of it. And so right when that one was done, I thought, okay, this sounds like this could be a good album title.
Mm-hmm.
And then as the record went on, initially we were going to call I wanted to call it Open the Gates. And but there was other things with Gates and this, and then I thought, nah. I mean, I knew what it meant to me, but after it was all done, I was like, I still kept going back to that title, "Rejoice in the Suffering." So yeah, that's how it just stuck.
Yeah, stuck in a very good way. Obviously, it's appropriate for the times. But when did you actually finish the album?
We started writing it. Well, we had the first song written several years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think we started writing right after we flew home in March from some canceled shows. That was like March 13th. So like the 15th, we started deep, heavy, everyday writing.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see, March, April, May, June, July. I think we were done writing and recording around July-ish. It was like about a 4-month period where we were tracking and moving pretty quickly because I didn't have to travel and it was just every day. But yeah, it was about a 4-month period of time.
Did you know outright, hey, I'm going to write a solo album, or you just felt like writing?
No, it's something I've been wanting to do for years, and just life gets in the way.
Yeah.
Time management. You get a little complacent, you get a little lazy, you're burned out. My ears. The last thing I want to do when I come home is mess around with music.
Yes.
Um, so once I knew that, okay, I think we're going to be off the road for a while before anybody really knew quite the extent of what was happening. Um, I remember watching a thing with Michael Osterholm on Joe Rogan.
Mm-hmm.
He was like one of the first people to talk about this. And I said to the guys, like, hey, I think this is going to get really bad and we're going to be out for many, many, many months. And I kept sending the link to other people I knew, like, hey, and everything that the guy said in there was like pretty dead on.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so it's something I've always wanted to do, but once that I knew that I would be home every day, I was like, okay, no interruptions. I can totally immerse myself in this every single day with Craig and not get so far and then have to get on a plane and go and then come back and then I got 3 days home. We'll do it
Right.
when I come back from the next trip. And before you know it, months go by and then you're not in the headspace and then you have writer's block and blah blah blah.
That all speaks to me. I get it. I'm glad you're putting all that out there. Not
Yeah.
everybody realizes, hey, you've got a solo album. Hey, you're in Queensryche, that kind of thing. But you've always been big on side projects and one-off recordings. We've seen you record with Michael Sweet, Metal Church, Glenn Drover. It seems like you've always made time somehow, no matter how busy
For everybody else.
Yeah.
Well, it's different when somebody says, hey, I have some friends right now, a few different little side things. And I'm not like, oh, I'm in this band and that band. I'm not in other bands, but it's like, oh, I've always loved Metal Church. Like they've never had another singer. Why would I not do this? Because
Right.
I don't want to be that guy that, like, I'm not a work for hire kind of a singer. I'm not a guy that'll be like, hey, we want you to sing on this record and we'll pay you X amount of dollars. That's
Right.
I'm not interested in that. The stuff that I've done is always something I liked. I'm friends with the people. It would be cool to do. Um, that, and there's that fine line between watering yourself down in the industry and then also capitalizing on fun creative opportunity. I mean, it's just music.
Yeah.
And it's like, on the one hand, I don't think it should be taken too seriously. Like, it's just music. Like, okay, I'm gonna sing with some friends on a cool song, and that'll
Yeah.
be that. A lot of people take a lot of stock and, oh, he did this with this guy and this with that guy, and there is truth to that. But at the same time, like, you only have one life. Why would I not want to have fun and record something with people that I like? So it's a delicate balance. But yeah, it's like, the mechanic's car runs like shit. It's like, if I could just harness into, but my thing, I feel like, well, this is my baby, and
Yeah.
it's got to be right. But truth be told, Craig and I wrote this thing, and it was like, dude, that's such a killer riff. Like, move on. Let's work on a pre-chorus now. And what do you got for a chorus? And it was never like reworking all these guitar parts and beating it to death. It's like, when I knew something was cool, even if it was simple, I was like, I like it. That's really awesome. Let's move on. And so we were really able to some things just write themselves. And a lot of these songs, like, I remember Craig sent me the music to Crossroads to Insanity, and he had I said, you got any melody ideas in your head to kickstart it? He's like, I kind of have an idea for a verse. And he told me the verse idea, which I utilized. I changed a little bit, but that was like, I remember, like, a day later, I wrote all the lyrics and finished everything up and sent it back. And I was like, so that one was like a 3 day song. And, Hellbound and Down was one of the last ones. I took forever. I was like, I don't think this is going to be good, and I'm having trouble with this and that. But yeah, sometimes you're saying, oh, I'm glad you're throwing it out there. Yeah, you get writer's block. Like, you can't just turn it on and just crank out good stuff. Sometimes you'll listen to it later and you're like, this doesn't hold up. All right, back to the drawing board. And then I'll leave that song. I mean, I've got 25 plus Queensryche songs in front of me that I'm working on various parts. It's like, okay, I got a really good verse for this. I'm stumped on a chorus, and I'll send it to Eddie. You got any chorus ideas? I got nothing. And then I'll work on, I got a really cool chorus for this song. And so they're just in little pieces. And then you start filling in the gaps. But yeah.
You're such a pro. You just answered like two of my next like thoughts or questions right there. But
sorry,
the writer's block part, without being like too name checky, a lot of the people I've been interviewing lately, it's either feast or famine. Like somebody like Vanessa Carlton, she said she's not able to write. The singer of the Fratellis, he said he's written 2.5 songs in the last 2 years. And then there's other people I'm seeing who have not been more productive than they've been in the last year and change. And I'm putting you in the productive category, because even if you're like, well, I haven't finished that much, I've started that much,
right.
You actually made and got a solo album out during a pandemic.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
Because, people are like, oh, you work really hard. And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot more time that I could be utilizing to music and being a little more productive. But, I'm home. I haven't been on the road in a year. Yeah, I wake up whenever. I go to bed. I just finished Breaking Bad, because everyone's like, you got to see Breaking Bad. And I never saw it. I've been binging. I just watched the last episode last night. And then at 2:00, I started watching El Camino last night. So, I went to bed at 4:30, whatever it was. And I woke up. And so it's like, okay, man, if I would have been up at 8:00 and started, so it's kind of like having this discipline that you got to force yourself to have good time management. But again, my best writing and creative stuff happens in the evening. I don't usually do well with music like at noon. It's like, I want to do other things during the day. And then at night, that's when the better lyrics and ideas start happening. And I usually just dedicate the evening for music.
The better relationships and the better art happen in the evening. That's the fact. Like, I'm nicer in the evening. I'm not saying that you're not nice.
I'm not a morning person. I'm not a morning person. But yeah, like when people want to like call and my phone's blowing up at, noon or 1, it's like,
Yeah.
but in the evening, it's like, hey, we'll jump on a call. And yeah, I'm more of an evening person.
So this album, for what it's worth in this day and age of SoundScan, including YouTube streams and Spotify streams into album sales, for what it's worth, like #1 on top new artist albums, because you're a new artist, Todd. You're totally new. You haven't been playing in arenas over the last decade. And #2 on the hard music albums, #2 in the current rock, like really high placements. So
Yeah.
I'm guessing it's one of those things where if that didn't happen, you would go, I don't care. And it does happen. You get those stats, you go, yeah, you see, ณ์1, I did it.
You're right. If it didn't happen, I would have been like, that's expected. I'm in the underdog genre.
Yeah.
I'm in a genre that doesn't get mainstream play and support and blah, blah, blah. And the album sales, have been, I mean, I don't know if you know what sale numbers look like these days.
Yeah, I come from the music business. I know.
So,
I remember, sorry to cut you off.
No.
So when I was working for an artist management company in 08 or 09, Cake had the #1 album that week. I love the band Cake from Sacramento.
I don't know them.
They had a bunch of big hits in the mid 90s. It was kind of an alternative thing. They stick around. They'll still play to 2,000-3,000 people a night.
That's great. That's a lot.
That's a lot. They're still doing awesome. Very alternative though. They don't play the game. And they had the #1 album in the week. And I think it was like 38,000 scanned. And like right before that, Kelly Clarkson had the #1 album. There's something like 48,000. And I remember the other people at the company going, oh no, that's the #1. Because they were thinking of the days when NSYNC had 1.2 million week 1, things like that. So I get the numbers and the significance.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I did this, I was just like, look, I'm only doing this just for the creative outlet. And nothing more. That's all that this was. And I talked to Joe at the label. He was like, you still want to put out a record? And I was like, do you want to put it out? And we talked, and I was like, I don't think it's going to sell a lot. Just letting you know, like, it's just the way that the industry is and the genre is. And I'm, I don't have a huge name. I'm not Sting. I mean, I'm gonna, okay, I'm in a band within that world that is known. And but when an artist from a band does their own thing, the numbers are never close
5 to 10% of the diehard fan base usually.
Right. But the Verdict first week in the US was around 8,200. And then when I got my first weeks, I remember saying, look, if I can sell 1,000, I would be stoked. And then, the numbers, I was like, all right, what are the first week? And it was, 43, 31. And I was like, holy shit, like, wow. And then every week, it's 650, then it's 5 something, then it was 100, then it was 150. So I'm already at 6,300 and change. And I said, you know what? That's really respectable.
Yes.
Considering the climate and, that kind of thing. So everything is just a bonus at that point. It's just like, oh, wow, it charted. I mean, what's cool is like, oh, I charted on my own, not affiliated with Queensryche. So it was nice to have something under my own name with some kind of a stamp. Not that validates anything, because the music stands on its own, whether somebody likes it or not. But sure, I'll take it. But if it didn't, I would have been like, oh, that kind of sucks. But did I really expect more? Not really. So whatever.
As Mel Brooks would say, expect the worst, hope for the best. And that sounds pretty much the best.
Bingo.
To me. That the last Queensryche album, you played drums on it. And when I interviewed Eddie, calling back to what I said before, I said, when Todd joined the band, did you know he played drums? And he's like, no, I didn't know that. We didn't ask. So that's just kind of a happy accent that a beyond capable drummer happens to be there in the band.
Yeah, I mean, I think I had told him, like, because he knew me from Michael introducing me to them on their conversations, like, oh, this guy sings in a band, sings for Crimson Glory, blah, blah, blah. You know, I wasn't pushing the drummer thing on them, obviously. Why would I?
Yeah.
But I was like, look, I'm really a drummer that likes to sing. I consider myself a drummer that just likes to sing. I don't consider myself a singer that drums. I'm a drummer that enjoys singing, and that's it. I don't know that I'm not the greatest singer in the world. There's a lot of guys better than me, but you know, this is kind of my wheelhouse. This is what I like to do.
Sure.
Blah blah blah. And then, you know, then when I started like hanging, and you know, I would get on the drums and be like, hey dude, let's play you know, this song from The Warning or whatever. You know, when it was a break, I would want to get on the kit and be a drummer and play with the guys as a drummer. You know, during a rehearsal, if Scott went to the bathroom or something or whatever, it would be like, hey, you know, let's fuck around for a minute. And then, you know, when they learned that I was a drummer, and you know, I started crafting demos with the band. And I remember Scott telling me, hey, I said, hey, I'm not trying to step on anybody's toes, but you know, Michael sent me a song to see if I would work on stuff, because I know you're piled up with demos and doing drums for that. He's like, no, whatever moves the ball forward, by all means, go ahead. Like, have, you know, do your thing. I said, okay. So that was kind of how I always became involved in drum writing for a lot of Queensryche demos that made the records. And so, yeah, when it came time for the verdict, and Scott wasn't available or making himself available or whatever you want to call it, he wasn't doing it. I was just like, hey, I've done all the demos. And Zeus was like, let's get him on a click. If he isn't the guy, then I will 100% pull him off and we'll find somebody else. But I think keeping it within the band, this, you know, and then I sat down and started playing, and he was like, dude, that's your guy. He totally gets it. He's totally capable. He's good on a click. He can track in the studio just fine. This is going to be good. And we had already pushed recording back a couple times. So
Yeah.
it was like, okay, I know every nook and cranny of these songs. Not only did I write the drum parts, but I knew all the vocals.
Yeah.
And so I knew the arrangements. I knew I was gonna do a vocal thing, and maybe not to do a drum fill there because I wanted the vocal to stand out, or maybe I would phrase something vocally.
Yeah.
And I wanted the drum fill to go with the vocal phrasing. So yeah, it worked to our advantage, and it was a lot of fun. But you know, Eddie does really good. When Eddie writes songs, he sends over like full songs with drums, and like he writes drum parts too for the demos that he shoots over. And I mean, he's really good at it. But I guess being a bass player, you're kind of in that
rhythm section.
Bingo. Yeah.
Wow. Well, if I've done my research correctly, you know, you've been in the Queensryche fold for about 9 years, and usually when there's a new member, like you can be skeptical of like 2, 3, maybe 4 years, maybe that first album. You can't be skeptical after that, because you're like, if he sucked, why would they keep him around? So I would have to imagine that since you've joined the band, that there is, I don't want to say a generation, but there are a lot of people that are like, if Todd's not in it, it's not Queensryche. You know, 9 years in at this point.
You think? I don't know.
I would have to imagine anytime somebody does a job for more than 5 years, that there's people who are used to that person who does it that way and all that. You know, I saw you guys open up for the Scorpions at the Barclays Center. And like everyone, I think I was maybe skeptical of like, oh, well, that's not the original guy. And then you see no, he's the younger model that can do everything on this thing. There's no changing the keys with this guy. He fits in there. So, you know, this is a compliment, not a question. Saying congratulations to finding your way into an institution that probably no one was expecting you to be a long-term part of.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's funny. I always hear like, they'll definitely be an all original lineup reunion. Like every band does it. And I'm thinking, well, if you knew what I know, I don't think that's going to happen. You know?
Yeah.
And other than the optics of it, why? What's the point? I mean, we saw for 15 years what it sounded like. And I think when I came in, I said, hey, let's play in standard tuning. I have homework to do. If I'm struggling, let me work on coming up to you, and instead of you coming down to me. I mean, if at some point I'm not able to sing in the original tuning and we have to down tune, I will do it gracefully, but I'm not going to bullshit my way about it. I'll be like, yeah, I can't sing as high as that anymore. And so, yeah, we down tune a half a step or whatever it is. I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm not going to make some BS reason why we do it. Yeah. But nevertheless, I mean, I think, yeah, it's almost like catching lightning in a bottle. I mean, there are those bands that have successfully done that. But then you have, the Gary Sharon, Van Halen situation, where no matter how good the guy is as a singer, or how, it really boils down to, does the audience embrace it? Period. And there's just that X factor that you can't always put your finger on. And so I feel fortunate that I think the majority, yeah, there's still a split and whatever, but I think the majority of people, if they put their biases aside, go, this sounds pretty legit.
Yeah.
And that they feel like they have their band back. And so, yeah, I mean, it'll be 9 years in July, I think. And I'm glad, because I wasn't like a one album guy. It was like, okay, we're doing the 4th record and we're contracted for 2 more with Century. So you'll definitely get 5 records out of me under Century Media. And then, we're going to keep going. These guys, this is all they do. They're going to do this until they can no longer physically do it. And so, yeah. And at that point, hell, I will have been in the band longer than I think even maybe DeGarmo at that point.
Right. That was going to be the next.
I mean, he's been out of the band longer than he was in the band.
Right.
And I'd have to see how many years he was in the band, 16, 15,
like
I don't know, whatever it is.
98, something like that. 16-ish, yeah.
So it's a long time. I mean, I'm not there, but at some point I assumed that I would be there. And yeah, what's interesting is, at what point I had a really good conversation with somebody yesterday, and we talked about, I'll make it brief because I know you have more and we got a time schedule, but we talked about when is a band considered like a tribute band? Like if you have no more original members, like Foreigner.
Like Foreigner, yes.
Okay, and they play, people love it, and it doesn't really seem to be that problematic.
Right.
I'm not the original guy, but again, after 9 years, 10 years, 15 years, the guy's been in almost 20 years. Am I in the fucking band? Like when is enough? And you just say, look, I'm collaborating with original members. I did do 2 records with almost all the original guys, and things are going really good. Things are good, and we're still putting out new music. And but it's a delicate situation with the audience, because again, no matter how good you are,
yeah,
if they don't embrace that or accept you, that's just something that you can't control.
Yeah, because you said Gary Sharon, and I'm a diehard Van Halen fan. I have a podcast just about David Lee Roth, which is not here nor there. But Roth was in Van Halen for basically 10 years. He was out of the band in early 85. And he goes, so he's been out of the band for 36 years, So maybe you kind of got to think about the fact that he's done as much music outside the band as inside the band. So totally hear what you're saying. So being respectful of your time, you're the VIP here, Todd. The closer, any last words for the kids?
Don't take candy from strangers. For the kids, what I love to see? I love to see younger people come to our show, and they've heard of Queensryche through their parents, but there are people that will come up, like kids, and they'll hand, the Condition Human or the Verdict album, and they only know Queensryche with this lineup. They don't know the old
There's
thing.
that. There's that thing I said.
And to me, it's weird. It's like, oh, but you don't know what you're missing. There's so much rich greatness in those first 5, maybe 6 records. Like, after that, not so much. But boy, what a profound impact Queensryche had with the original guys. And Jeff Tate's voice was just incredible, and the chemistry of DeGarmo and Michael, and blah blah blah. It's really cool to see that generational thing happen where younger kids come up and look, if I can inspire one person or help to create a really great experience at a concert, and that will stick with them forever and give them a good feeling, or it's good coping, therapy. People show up and, my husband, this was his favorite band, and we had tickets, and he passed away last month, and he insisted that I still go before he died, and like wacky stuff where you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're here. I would be home sobbing. There's so much more than just the songs, but the connection with people. My advice to young people, this is if they were interested in this business, it's a very dirty business. It's a hard business. It can be very rewarding and very ugly at the same time. Only do it because you love it. Fuck fortune and forget fame. And those are the wrong reasons, and just do it. And you don't have to be on a magazine cover to have made it. You can be a session player. You can be a teacher. You can do editorials. There's so many different facets. You could be in the equipment and backline companies, and
Sure.
There's just so many cool things around music that you could do. Don't think that the only making it is like having notoriety and people knowing who you are when you walk around. That's all bullshit. That doesn't mean you've made it. So I think that's the most important thing. Stop placing so much emphasis on fame, because it's overrated.
Well said. I cannot top that. Well, whether it's you solo, whether it's you with Queensryche, whatever it is, looking forward to seeing you live when the time is right in New York. But congratulations on having technically a #1 album in this day and age. So
thank you,
Todd. Keep
Appreciate
up the
it, buddy.
greatness.
Yeah, man. Have a great day. I hope to see you in the near future.
Paltrocast.